When Elvis Presley collapsed at Graceland on August 16, 1977, the world lost its king. But his family discovered something even more shocking. Despite earning over $1 million per concert, Elvis died nearly broke, leaving just $5 million and a mansion drowning in debt. Yet, out of ruin, Graceland was reborn, and the Presley empire grew into a machine worth hundreds of millions. The fortune that rose from tragedy became so vast, it brought both relief and tears. The king dies in debt. On August 16, 1977, the world awoke to unthinkable news. Elvis Presley was dead. At just 42 years old, he collapsed in his Graceland bathroom and was pronounced dead at 3:30 p.m. in Memphis. Fans around the globe mourned the loss of the king of rock and roll, but behind the public grief, his family was thrown into financial panic. The man who had earned over $1 million per concert in the 1970s left behind a shocking reality. His fortune had nearly vanished. Despite decades of sold-out tours, film contracts, and record-breaking sales, Elvis's estate in 1977 was valued at only $5 million net worth. The number was a fraction of what he should have had. The culprit was mismanagement, extravagant spending, and one devastating business decision. In 1973, under the guidance of Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis signed away his future royalties for a mere $5.4 million to RCA Records. It was a deal that stripped the king's heirs of hundreds of millions in potential income. Elvis's generosity also drained his accounts. He was famous for giving away Cadillacs, jewelry, and houses to friends and strangers alike. His personal bills were enormous: doctors on call 24/7, staff on payroll, and lavish indulgences in clothes, food, and private travel. By the mid-1970s, Presley's lifestyle cost him millions annually, outpacing even his touring income. Those closest to him admitted he rarely thought about money, believing his fame would last forever. But fame could not stop the numbers from bleeding red. Then came Graceland. Purchased in 1957 for $102,500, the mansion was a dream home, but also a financial trap. By 1977, property taxes, upkeep, and staff costs were consuming nearly $500,000 per year, equivalent to over $2.5 million today. With debt mounting and royalties gone, the Presley family faced the unthinkable. The empire might collapse just as the king was laid to rest. Elvis's death was a cultural earthquake and a financial ticking time bomb. The king's funeral drew more than 80,000 mourners to Memphis, but grief quickly gave way to cold numbers. How could the most successful entertainer in history leave so little behind? With Elvis gone, the responsibility fell to his father, Vernon Presley, who struggled to keep the estate afloat. And as debts mounted, the most iconic home in rock history, Graceland itself, teetered on the edge of ruin. The mansion that symbolized Elvis's triumph was about to become his family's greatest burden. Graceland on the brink. Graceland, bought in 1957 when Elvis was only 22 years old, symbolized his meteoric rise. For $102,500, the king secured a 13-acre estate that would become his sanctuary. By the time of his death in 1977, it was one of the most recognizable homes in America. But while fans saw a palace, accountants saw a liability. Taxes and maintenance costs ballooned, reaching nearly $500,000 a year, or more than $2.5 million in today's money. For a family already drowning in debt, Graceland was a financial nightmare. When Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, took over as executor of the estate in 1977, he was overwhelmed. The estate owed money to the IRS, creditors, and banks, while lawsuits drained more funds. Vernon tried to manage, but his health declined rapidly. On June 26, 1979, just 2 years after Elvis's death, Vernon passed away at age 63. His death created a leadership vacuum. Without clear financial guidance, Graceland risked foreclosure, and Elvis's legacy teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. In desperation, a board of trustees was formed in 1979 to stabilize the estate. It included Elvis's lawyer, bank representatives, and family advisors. But with mounting costs and shrinking revenue, their options were limited. By 1980, the Presley estate reportedly had less than $1 million in liquid assets. Closing Graceland was even considered, as the family debated whether maintaining such an expensive property was sustainable. Fans still visited the gates, leaving flowers and letters, but there was no revenue stream to cover the bills. Amid this crisis, a radical idea emerged. Elvis's former wife, Priscilla Presley, who had divorced him in 1973 but remained deeply connected to his memory, suggested opening Graceland to the public. Inspired by historic home museums like Monticello and Mount Vernon, Priscilla believed fans would pay to walk inside Elvis's world. At first, the idea was controversial. Many felt it would cheapen his legacy, but by 1981, it was clear. Without bold action, Graceland would be lost forever. Priscilla was ready to gamble everything. It was a decision born out of desperation, but it would change history. What began as a risky plan to save a decaying mansion became the cornerstone of a billion-dollar empire. On June 7, 1982, Graceland opened its gates to fans for the first time. Thousands poured through the doors, eager to see the king's private world. What the Presley family feared might be exploitation became salvation. And in the process, Priscilla Presley transformed from grieving ex-wife to empire builder. Priscilla's gamble saves the empire. On June 7, 1982, nearly 5 years after Elvis's death, Priscilla Presley stood at the gates of Graceland to welcome the first paying visitors. That morning, over 3,000 fans lined up along Elvis Presley Boulevard, clutching cameras, flowers, and souvenirs. For many, it was a pilgrimage. For the Presley family, it was survival. The mansion that had been draining nearly $500,000 a year in upkeep now had a chance to generate income. The gamble was simple: turn Elvis's private world into a public shrine. Inside, fans walked through Elvis's trophy room, saw his gold records, admired his flamboyant stage outfits, and gazed at the Jungle Room where he recorded some of his final tracks in 1976. They even toured the Meditation Garden, where Elvis was buried alongside his mother Gladys and father Vernon. Each ticket, priced at $5 in 1982, helped reverse the estate's fortunes. By the end of the first year, Graceland tours brought in over $4 million, transforming a financial disaster into a profitable attraction almost overnight. The success didn't stop there. By the late 1980s, annual attendance topped 600,000 visitors, rivaling America's most popular landmarks. Merchandise, from T-shirts and coffee mugs to replica jumpsuits, added millions more to the balance sheet. The money that once seemed impossible to find now flowed steadily. In just a few years, Graceland became the second most visited home in the United States, after the White House. What had started as Priscilla's desperate idea was now the cornerstone of a growing empire. For Priscilla, the triumph was personal. She had divorced Elvis in 1973, but she remained devoted to protecting his legacy for their daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, who was just 9 years old when her father died. Priscilla once admitted in an interview that she couldn't let Graceland go under. Her gamble not only saved the estate, but secured her reputation as the architect of the Presley business empire. By the end of the 1980s, Elvis wasn't just remembered as a singer. He had become a global brand. What began as a single decision to open Graceland's doors evolved into something much larger. Priscilla's vision led to the creation of a formal business machine, an organization dedicated to managing Elvis's name, image, and likeness with corporate precision. By the early 1980s, Elvis Presley Enterprises, EPE, was born. It would take the king's memory far beyond the gates of Graceland, transforming him into one of the most profitable icons in death, even more than he had been in life. Elvis Presley Enterprises is born. In 1981, as preparations to open Graceland were underway, the Presley family and advisors realized they needed more than tourism. They needed structure. Thus, Elvis Presley Enterprises, EPE, was officially established in the early 1980s to control licensing, merchandising, and branding. EPE became the engine behind the Elvis phenomenon, turning his name into a trademarked powerhouse. T-shirts, lunchboxes, mugs, posters, EPE ensured Elvis's face was everywhere. By 1985, impersonators filled Las Vegas stages, tribute concerts toured globally, and Elvis merchandise flooded stores. The results were staggering. By 1989, the estate was valued at approximately $75 million, a monumental leap from the near bankruptcy of 1977. Annual revenue reached $15 million, proving that Elvis was more profitable in death than in his final years of life. EPE wasn't just about selling souvenirs. It negotiated licensing deals, protected copyrights, and ensured that Elvis's image remained a cultural force. With every record reissue, television special, and memorabilia sale, the Presley empire grew stronger. The momentum carried into the new millennium. In 2005, CKX Inc., a media conglomerate, purchased 85% of EPE for $100 million, leaving Lisa Marie Presley with a 15% stake. This deal gave EPE the resources to expand globally, creating Elvis festivals in Asia, South America, and Europe, and launching new merchandise lines. The Presley brand became international, reaching younger generations who had never seen Elvis perform live. By the late 2000s, EPE was a global operation generating tens of millions annually. EPE's creation changed the narrative of Elvis Presley forever. No longer was he just the man who died in debt at Graceland in 1977. He was now the center of a billion-dollar industry. Fans didn't just remember the king, they consumed him through every product imaginable. The Presley name had become eternal, maintained by lawyers, marketers, and corporate partners. Elvis was everywhere, not only because of his music, but because his estate made sure he would never fade. Yet even as EPE built an empire, the Presley family was forced to confront painful truths about what Elvis had lost in his lifetime. One deal, signed in 1973 under the guidance of Colonel Tom Parker, stripped the king of his most valuable asset, his royalties. Songs like Jailhouse Rock and Love Me Tender stopped paying his heirs a dime. The royalties that should have sustained generations were gone, sold off for a quick payout. It was the costliest mistake of Elvis's career. The royalties that vanished. In March 1973, Elvis Presley signed away the most valuable part of his career. Under the guidance of Colonel Tom Parker, RCA Records purchased Elvis's entire back catalog of recordings made up to that date. The deal netted Elvis just $5.4 million, a number that seemed large at the time but would prove devastating in hindsight. Within the contract, Parker arranged to take a staggering 50% commission, leaving Elvis with barely half. With a single pen stroke, the king of rock and roll had surrendered hundreds of millions in future income. The fallout was catastrophic. Songs like Jailhouse Rock, 1957, Love Me Tender, 1956, and Heartbreak Hotel, 1956, generated massive royalties for RCA, but nothing for Elvis's heirs after 1977. Every time a Presley classic played on the radio, in commercials or in films, the estate earned nothing. By contrast, artists like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones retained partial ownership of their recordings, ensuring long-term wealth. Elvis's family was cut out of the very music that built his empire. What made the situation worse was that Elvis never owned his master recordings outright. Unlike later artists who fought for control, Presley had signed contracts in the 1950s and 1960s that left him powerless. Colonel Parker prioritized short-term cash over long-term security, ensuring Elvis always had immediate income, but nothing to fall back on. In the 1970s, this seemed manageable. Elvis was still earning more than $1 million per show. But when he died suddenly on August 16, 1977, the decision revealed its true cost. The only lifeline left came from publishing rights to songs Elvis co-wrote or arranged, though they represented only a fraction of his catalog. Without merchandise and Graceland tourism, the Presley estate might have collapsed entirely. This single mistake, selling away the crown jewels of Elvis's music, remains one of the greatest missteps in entertainment history. What should have been generational wealth became RCA's prize, and Elvis's family was forced to build an empire on everything but his biggest hits. By the time Lisa Marie Presley came of age, the damage had already been done. The music royalties were gone, but the empire her mother Priscilla built through Graceland and EPE was thriving. On her 25th birthday in 1993, Lisa Marie officially inherited the Elvis Presley Trust, valued at nearly $100 million. Yet fortune, as her father proved, is hard to hold on to. Over the next 2 decades, Lisa Marie's inheritance would unravel in ways eerily similar to Elvis's own downfall. Lisa Marie's $100 million inheritance. On February 1, 1993, Lisa Marie Presley turned 25 years old. With that milestone came her birthright, full control of the Elvis Presley Trust, an estate valued at around $100 million. The inheritance included Graceland, publishing rights, memorabilia, and a 15% stake in Elvis Presley Enterprises, EPE. For a brief moment, it seemed Lisa Marie had secured both financial independence and cultural stewardship. She was no longer just the king's daughter. She was the custodian of his empire. But managing that empire proved far more difficult than inheriting it. Lisa Marie trusted financial manager Barry Siegel, who oversaw her wealth throughout the 1990s and 2000s. Under his guidance, she sold 85% of EPE in 2005 to CKX Inc. for $100 million, retaining only a small stake. While the deal injected quick cash, critics argued it stripped her of long-term revenue and control. Lisa Marie believed the arrangement would stabilize her finances. Instead, it marked the beginning of her financial unraveling. By 2016, Lisa Marie's fortune had all but collapsed. Court documents revealed she had only $14,000 in cash, $500,000 in credit card debt and had defaulted on massive loans. She accused Siegel of mismanaging her inheritance, while Siegel countered that Lisa Marie's spending habits, mansions, private jets, and failed music ventures had drained her accounts. The lawsuit exposed the Presley family's finances to the world, a public humiliation that mirrored Elvis's own money troubles in the 1970s. Despite personal ruin, the Presley empire survived. Graceland continued to earn tens of millions annually, and EPE expanded globally under corporate ownership. Lisa Marie remained the symbolic figurehead, even as her personal finances collapsed. By the time of her death on January 12, 2023, she had endured the same tragedy as her father: fame, fortune, and mismanagement, ending in debt. The $100 million inheritance that should have lasted generations became another Presley cautionary tale. Yet, the Presley brand was far from finished. Even as Lisa Marie battled lawsuits and debt, Elvis's legend continued to thrive. In 2022, director Baz Luhrmann released Elvis, a blockbuster film starring Austin Butler. The biopic not only earned hundreds of millions worldwide, it reignited interest in Elvis's music, merchandise, and Graceland itself. The King's voice returned to charts, streaming doubled, and the Presley estate experienced one of its biggest surges since his death in 1977. The Elvis biopic that made millions. In 2022, more than 4 decades after Elvis Presley's death on August 16, 1977, Hollywood brought the King back to life on the big screen. Director Baz Luhrmann's biopic Elvis, starring Austin Butler as Elvis and Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker, became a cultural phenomenon. Released in June 2022, the film grossed over $287 million worldwide. For an estate once crippled by debt in the late 1970s, the movie was nothing short of a financial and cultural revival. Streaming platforms saw an immediate surge. Within weeks of the film's release, Elvis's music streams doubled on Spotify and Apple Music, while physical album sales jumped 30% in the U.S. Billboard charts. Iconic tracks like Suspicious Minds, 1969, and Can't Help Falling in Love, 1961, charted again, introducing a new generation to his music. Merchandise sales skyrocketed at Graceland and online stores. Elvis wasn't just back in theaters, he was back in the cultural bloodstream. The biopic also had a direct impact on Graceland. By December 2022, the mansion saw record-breaking attendance, surpassing 700,000 visitors in a single year, making it the most visited U.S. home after the White House. Forbes estimated that the estate earned $110 million in 2022 alone, largely fueled by the movie's success. Tours sold out, special exhibits opened, and fans flocked to Memphis from around the world to walk in Elvis's footsteps. For the Presley family, the film was both profitable and deeply emotional. Priscilla Presley, now in her late 70s, publicly praised Butler's performance, while Lisa Marie Presley called the movie extraordinary just months before her death in January 2023. The film wasn't just entertainment, it was legacy preservation. It proved that Elvis's story still had power, still had money, and still had the ability to bring fans to tears and open wallets. But just as Elvis's legacy was enjoying a new surge, tragedy struck again. On January 12, 2023, Lisa Marie Presley died suddenly at age 54. Her death reopened old wounds and sparked fresh conflict over who would inherit and control Graceland. Within weeks, court filings revealed a bitter family feud. At stake wasn't just money, but the symbolic throne of Elvis's empire. And once again, Priscilla Presley stood at the center of the storm. The battle for Graceland. Lisa Marie's sudden death on January 12, 2023, left a void in both her family and the Presley estate. According to her 2016 trust amendment, her three daughters, Riley Keough, born 1989, and twins Harper and Finley Lockwood, born 2008, were named heirs. Riley, the eldest, was appointed trustee. But within weeks, Priscilla Presley contested the amendment, arguing it was fraudulent. The legal battle quickly turned into a media circus, dragging the Presley family's grief into public view. Priscilla claimed she had been removed as trustee without proper notification. Court filings in February 2023 questioned the authenticity of Lisa Marie's signature on the 2016 document. Riley Keough, meanwhile, insisted her mother's wishes were clear. The fight pitted grandmother against granddaughter, echoing decades of Presley family disputes. For the estate, valued between $400 million and $600 million, the outcome would determine who controlled the crown jewel, Graceland itself. The standoff ended in May 2023 with a settlement. Riley Keough was confirmed as sole trustee, securing control over Graceland and Lisa Marie's 15% stake in Elvis Presley Enterprises. Priscilla received $1 million in cash, an annual advisory role, and burial rights at Graceland near Elvis. The agreement prevented a drawn-out trial, but revealed the fractures inside the Presley dynasty. For fans, it was heartbreaking to watch Elvis's family fight over the very legacy he had left behind. The settlement closed one chapter, but the scars remained. Priscilla retained symbolic influence, but the future clearly belonged to Riley and her sisters. At just 33 years old in 2023, Riley inherited not only a fortune, but the responsibility of protecting Elvis's myth for the next generation. The battle for Graceland underscored a truth. Elvis's legacy was as much a family feud as it was a financial empire. But the Presley estate wasn't done facing battles. Just 1 year later, in May 2024, an even more shocking threat emerged, not from inside the family, but from fraudsters outside. When forged documents surfaced claiming Lisa Marie had mortgaged Graceland before her death, headlines exploded. Suddenly, the king's home was under the shadow of foreclosure. Fans feared the unimaginable, that Elvis's sanctuary might be stolen. What followed was one of the boldest courtroom fights in the estate's history. The fraudulent foreclosure attempt. In May 2024, a company called Nosany Investments and Private Lending LLC filed foreclosure documents in Tennessee courts, claiming Lisa Marie Presley had borrowed millions against Graceland before her death. The paperwork alleged unpaid balances on loans tied to the property, giving the company rights to seize Elvis's mansion. For millions of fans, the news was unthinkable. Graceland, the shrine visited by over 600,000 people annually, suddenly faced the threat of being auctioned away. Riley Keough, as trustee, acted swiftly. Within days, she hired a top legal team and filed an emergency injunction in Shelby County Court. The Presley estate argued that the documents were forged, the signatures fake, and the lenders non-existent. Investigators soon discovered discrepancies, addresses that didn't exist, business licenses that couldn't be verified, and records suggesting the entire company was fabricated. The attempt wasn't a loan dispute, it was outright fraud. On May 22, 2024, Judge Joe Day Jenkins ruled in Riley's favor, halting the foreclosure. Federal authorities soon charged suspects with mail fraud and related crimes. Graceland was declared untouchable, its title secure under the Presley estate. For fans, the ruling was a relief. For Riley, it was baptism by fire. In her first year as trustee, she had defended her grandfather's fortress from collapse, proving herself a worthy heir to the Presley empire. The scandal highlighted both the vulnerability and strength of celebrity estates. Graceland's attempted theft showed that even a billion-dollar brand could be targeted by fraud. Yet it also proved that the Presley legacy remained fiercely defended. The home Elvis bought in 1957 for $102,500 had survived debt, near bankruptcy, and now fraud. Once again, the King's fortress stood tall, protected by the next generation. With Graceland secure, the Presley estate entered a new chapter. From debt in 1977 to billion-dollar valuations in the 2020s, the journey had been filled with near disasters and miraculous revivals. Today, the estate is worth between $400 million and $600 million, with some analysts claiming over $1 billion. Graceland draws hundreds of thousands each year. Elvis's music streams globally, and his image remains timeless. Nearly 50 years after his death, the king of rock and roll still rules, not just in music, but in fortune. The billion-dollar legacy. Elvis Presley died on August 16, 1977, with only about $5 million net worth. Today, nearly 5 decades later, his estate is valued between $400 million and $600 million, with some experts arguing it surpasses $1 billion. Each year, Elvis generates between $40 million and $100 million in revenue, making him one of the top-earning dead celebrities. Graceland alone welcomes over 600,000 visitors annually, making it second only to the White House as the most visited home in America. The Presley fortune now rests in the hands of Riley Keough, who became trustee in 2023 after her mother Lisa Marie's death. Riley oversees Graceland, merchandise, licensing, and Elvis Presley Enterprises. Her leadership signals a new generation of stewardship. Supported by her younger sisters, Harper and Finley, Riley stands as the guardian of Elvis's myth. For fans, her role offers reassurance that the King's home and name remain in family hands. Beyond money, the empire is cultural. Elvis's songs, Hound Dog, 1956, Suspicious Minds, 1969, Burning Love, 1972, still stream billions of times. His likeness appears on shirts, mugs, and films. Each year, August 16th draws tens of thousands to candlelight vigils at Graceland. His influence stretches from rock to country to hip-hop. Elvis isn't just a memory. He's an economy. His myth is more alive now than in his final years, proving the king never truly left the building. What remains is a paradox. Elvis died young, broke, and surrounded by tragedy. Yet, in death, he became a financial titan, out-earning most living stars. His family endured debt, lawsuits, fraud, and infighting, but they preserved his name. Today, Elvis Presley's empire is proof that legends don't fade. They transform. The King's music, image, and home remain eternal. His billion-dollar legacy isn't just about wealth. It's about culture, memory, and myth that time can never erase. Nearly 5 decades after Elvis's death, the Presley empire is worth between $400 million and $1 billion. Graceland draws over 600,000 visitors a year. Elvis's music still streams globally, and his likeness fuels endless merchandise. But behind the profits lies a family scarred by battles, lawsuits, and grief. The king left behind more than money. He left a myth so powerful it both saved and divided his family. His fortune made them cry, not from joy, but from history's heavy cost.